You have to make a covenant. You promise that you'll never leave. You know that if you break that promise, you'll be punished for eternity. My name is Sinasta Colucci, and I spent 7.5 years in a cult before escaping. I grew up in the backwoods north of Redding, California, raised by a single mother. My upbringing wasn't a religious one. My mother had been Catholic growing up, and she sort of rejected the Catholic Church, and she was more or less a hippie. As soon as I turned 18, I moved to Michigan, and I found myself struggling, trying to make it on my own. I tried going to college and ended up dropping out, so I was sort of at a crossroads in my life. Around the same time, I had met my father for the first time since I was a baby. He's thinking that the world's going to end. This time it was 2003, and he was telling me that the world was going to end in 2012, and he was saying a safe place to be would be a community where they grow their own food. That's when I started looking online for communities that grow their own food. That's where everything changed. After one phone call, I was on a Greyhound bus for Missouri. I got picked up by a guy who called himself David. One of the first things he said to me was, "We've made a covenant to die to ourselves." I knew covenant basically means promise. I knew that much. But we made a promise to die to ourselves. So I thought, what is this, like a suicide pact? What's he talking about here? So I was really nervous going in. The next experience that really started to draw me in was that people were really friendly, almost too friendly. And they all came out to greet me as soon as the van pulled up and I got out, and everyone was hugging me and we're so happy that you're here. And it was relieving and kind of a little scary at the same time. So anyway, they just put me right to work pretty much right away. I was always working alongside of someone, and they'd always be talking to me about what they called the gospel of the kingdom. It mainly was focused on them as a community and how they're greater than everyone else, particularly greater than mainstream Christianity. They were constantly criticizing mainstream Christianity and how they're so much better. Look, we're living exactly the way it says we should in the book of Acts. They're quoting these Bible verses to me and saying, see, look, this is how you're supposed to live, following the Bible. I had this thought in my mind, well, what if everyone lived like this? It'd be the greatest thing if everyone on earth lived like this. It'd be peaceful, everyone would have a purpose. I thought it was great, and I was I want to find out what happens if everyone lives like this. I want to do my part to make that happen. And so within 3 weeks, I was baptized, so I became a member of the community. For the most part, I was pretty happy there for a while, until I had suppressed these urges that all young men have, in their minds. All those feelings started coming back. At a certain point, I went to this man that they had appointed as the shepherd over me. And I went to him and I told him about these thoughts I was having. And he said that you gotta masturbate, but you can't think about sex while you're doing it. You gotta have just a mechanical release, is what they called it. And then the next problem I ran into was they have what they call the Ham teaching. It's based on Genesis 9. Noah had 3 sons with him on the ark. Noah got drunk, and one of his sons, Ham, was disrespectful to Noah. So Noah cursed Ham and said that his descendants shall be the slaves of Shem's descendants. Shem was the other son who was, respectful. So they teach that all Shemites, all descendants of Shem are white people. So all black people are descendants of Ham. So they teach that actually race-based slavery was ordained by God. I heard this about a year after being there. So I was already fully indoctrinated. I don't know, I wanted everything else they said to be true, but it was really a struggle for me to hear this. My dad's black, and they consider me to be a Hamite because it's based on your father's lineage. That was a real struggle for me. Another thing they tried to explain to me was essentially by generalizing how they felt all black people live. They said, well, wouldn't they be better off here? Wouldn't they be better off being humble and submitting to Yeshua, the Messiah? You can't even get married unless they say you can, and then they'll tell you who you can marry. It's completely up to them. Your whole life is just in their hands. I continued to try my best, but eventually I came to a point where I didn't believe it anymore. So the woman who's now my wife, she was living in the same community as me in Missouri. She gave me this little note, and you're not supposed to talk to each other if you're single and of the opposite sex. Outside of public settings, I initiated things. I approached her, and then she writes me this note, and that's how we got caught. I don't think I would have approached her had I not had those doubts in my head in the first place. I had seen that she was struggling too. Like, she wanted to leave too, and she was ready to hitchhike. So I was like, you don't have to do that. Just, we can leave together. Yeah, they had a meeting, they kicked us out, and that night we were on a bus for northern Michigan. We had to go live with my stepdad on his farm. We got to northern Michigan in November of 2012, and it was already getting cold. And that winter, it was just really a harsh winter. Eventually, I did find a job at a local farm in the springtime, and I worked for a few years, and we had a son. We named him Terrence, and eventually I went back to college, and I got a bookkeeping certificate while my wife worked, and I got a job as an administrative assistant in a warehouse. And then my wife went back to college, and she got the same certificate. So we're doing fine now. There's a lot that I'm hoping that everyone can learn from what I experienced, and that's why I wrote a book about my experiences. There's a lot of really good things about the community that I think we could all learn from, but they're basic human principles that everyone can do. You don't have to join a cult, to be nice to people and to share, and you learn these things in kindergarten. But then we grow up and we enter the cruel world. The brutality of the world is what drove me into joining a cult in the first place. But you can still be a good person. You can still be generous. You don't have to give up everything you have to do that.